Hi, this is Red Ibis Coach. My name is Heather. And sometimes people feel like they can't move abroad because they have pets and they're scared of the process, or they think it's not possible, or they think it sounds too complicated. It's not. It's sometimes a lot of work and it can be a little bit expensive, but you can still move abroad even if you have pets. So I'm going to tell you about how to go to Japan with a cat. But first, I'm just gonna briefly. So I talked about this in a short, but I'm gonna cover a couple things one more time. So when you go to Europe, you need the pet to be microchipped and vaccinated for rabies. You wait 30 days, then you draw their blood. It's called a titer test. It's testing for rabies antibodies. You send that to a lab. This is from a USDA accredited vet. So the vet sends it to the lab. The lab confirms there's this much antibody evidence in the blood, sends the results back. Then you're ready to go. Okay? So, microchip, rabies vaccination, titer test, wait 3 months, go. Before you go, there are two things you'll have to do at least 10 days ahead of time. One is you go back to that vet, you get the final examination from the vet, and then they will send your information and your paperwork through the APHIS portal. For Europe, you need to have a physical copy returned to you, which they do through FedEx, so you have to prepay for an envelope. Then they send it back. It can feel a little scary because you won't know exactly when you're getting the documents back, but they understand that you're trying to leave the country with your pet. So they do everything in their power to get the documents back to you before you leave. I had about 3 days of leeway by the time I got my documents back. By the time I traveled, it was exactly 10 days since the examination. So the timing matters. It has to be 10 days or less. It's really, they're trying to be as close to the time that you arrive as possible that the other vet examined your pet. So that's Ireland. And then once you're there, once you're in Europe, anywhere in Europe, anywhere within the EU, you can stop by any vet and start getting your pet's stuff, all of their stuff, recorded in a pet passport. So that's what you can do for Europe. So now we're talking about Japan. And I'm going to use some like physical visual aids because fuck AI. So this is a whole document, like a whole booklet of information that you can download from the Japanese website. I will link it in the description of this video. But it's for importing cats and dogs into Japan from non-designated regions. The only designated regions in the world are Iceland, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji Islands, Hawaii, and Guam. Everywhere else in the world follows this documentation, but I can only speak to how you do it for the US working with a USDA accredited vet. If you are in another country, then when you Google, how do I get a cat from country you're in to Japan, you'll get different information than I get when I Google it because I'm in the US. So you want to download this or have the link handy because you'll refer to it a lot over the months. And I will tell you that if you want to make sure you're doing this process correctly with no jump scares and no, oh my God, how are we going to make this work at the last minute? I would say you need 8 months to prepare. And that's if your pet has not been microchipped before. And that is if your pet has not been vaccinated for rabies after the microchip. Okay, I found it. So it looks like this. You've got microchip, rabies vaccination number 1, rabies vaccination number 2, antibody serology test known as the titer test. This is where you stop doing stuff with the vet and you start waiting. This is a 6-month waiting period, which is why I recommend starting 8 months ahead of time. So if you're starting from scratch, as in you do not have a microchipped pet, then microchipping is the first step. So go to a USDA vet. You can find a USDA accredited vet. They work in regular clinics, but the easiest way to find them is to either call around and ask your local veterinarian offices, or go to the APHIS website, APHIS, the USDA APHIS website, and search for a vet that is accredited by the USDA. Once your pet is microchipped, you on the same day and the same appointment, you can get their first rabies vaccination. That starts your process. So the first rabies vaccination will be recorded on a rabies vaccination certificate that will have a bunch of information on it, including your pet's microchip number, which is why you can't start this process until they have a microchip. Everything is recorded against the microchip number once they have a microchip. So if your pet already has a microchip and they've already recently been vaccinated for rabies, then most likely you would be going to step 2. Or if you've just been on top of things for a long time, you're actually going to go straight to the antibody test. But most people don't have their pet microchip, so you're starting from scratch. If you're starting from scratch, it's microchip, rabies vaccination number 1, wait 30 days, rabies vaccination number 2, then send the blood draw. So the USDA accredited vet will have your pet's blood drawn to do the rabies titer test at a very specific facility. There's only a few of them in the US that are approved for this. And then you wait 6 months. So this is called an in-home quarantine, and it prevents you from having to quarantine your pet in Japan. So if you do it right, you won't be quarantining your pet at all in Japan. And so it saves your pet stress, it saves you stress, and it saves time. And you do not run the risk of getting in trouble in Japan because you didn't follow the rules. But there is a good chance that if you didn't follow the rules and you don't have the correct paperwork, you won't get the USDA approval at the end of the process, and you also will not fly with your pet because they look at the paperwork before they allow you to check in with your flight. So once the rabies antibody test the blood draw has been done, that starts day 0. So you have 180 days, 6 months, until you can fly with your pet to Japan. Some things that I've learned recently: you should have been in the US for at least 6 months. And I don't exactly know how you prove that. Maybe, I don't know. But they prefer that wherever you're doing this process from, you've been in that country for at least 6 months, as a resident, whether that is, as a citizen or on some kind of visa. If you're allowed to stay there for 6 months, you can do that process from wherever, but keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is if you have a European pet passport with the documentation of a rabies vaccination, that should be good enough. But there's been some weird issue with the fact that my pet has a pet passport that recorded her rabies vaccination, the most recent one, rather than a rabies vaccination certificate which you can get from almost any veterinarian in the US. And it's literally just a piece of paper, nothing special, with like the veterinarian's signature at the bottom and just like the information in the order that immigration likes it. So that can mean that whoever you're working with is going to be weird to you about the fact that you have the European pet passport rather than a rabies vaccination certificate, even though it's the same information. So, if you think that you might be returning to the US and or going to Japan or even these designated countries that Japan outlines, they have very strict pet import policies. So you would probably still need the rabies vaccination certificate for those countries. So just ask for it. Can you say, I'm really annoying, I'm so sorry, but there's a chance that we'll be traveling to a stricter country with stricter pet import rules. Can you make the rabies vaccination certificate, this piece of paper, can you make it look like this and can you please sign it? And most vets will probably be like, okay, you're annoying, but I'll do it. So yeah, once you've gotten microchip step one, rabies vaccination 1, wait 30 days, rabies vaccination 2, rabies antibody test, you wait 6 months. In the meantime, research the airline that you're planning on using and make sure that your pet is allowed to travel in cabin from the US to Japan. There are some other countries where they won't let the pet travel in cabin between the US and some other locations, for example, the UK. Some airlines will say that there's like a law or whatever where you can't have your pet in cabin. That is not true, but it's at the discretion of the airline whether or not you are allowed to have the pet in cabin, number one. And then between which countries you're allowed to have the pet in cabin. So make 100% sure that you are allowed to have the pet in cabin before you start spending time looking at prices and timing and stuff like that. Once you know the airline and you're sure that you're allowed to have the pet in cabin, I don't know about cargo, don't ask me about cargo. You want to look at flight dates, look at timing and stuff like that, have a basic idea of the price of the ticket and the day and time that you're going, and call them. Don't book it online, just call them. Call them and say, I have a pet traveling with me in cabin. And they'll probably ask about weight and they'll probably ask about the carrier. And so you give them like a general idea of that and tell them that you're working on the immigration paperwork because they will ask about that too. So then you book your ticket. Similar to Japan, Ireland also requires that you let them know ahead of time that you're coming, but it's a little bit less of an intensive informational process. So with Japan, you need to let them know a minimum of 40 days before you arrive that you're coming with your pet. They'll ask you for information. You can try to share like as much documentation as you want, depending on where you're at in the process. But they'll also ask you questions and kind of like guide you through the process. Try to have everything available to share with them as soon as you can once you start that communication with them, because it'll just be smoother. So they would be asking, what's your flight number? Where are you flying into? And that's another thing. So let me back up for 1 second. within the Japanese website, there is a list of animal quarantine service branches. So that means all the airports in Japan that allow you to import a pet. Each of them has an email address, and a larger airport like um, Narita in Tokyo, they have Terminal 1, Terminal 2, so you need that information. If you're flying into Narita, you'll need that information. My flight is landing in Terminal 1, or my flight is landing in Terminal 2. And so, yeah, they're preparing you to not have to quarantine your pet. So there are two ways that Japan is trying really hard to make your life as easy as possible, considering the fact that you have to do all of this paperwork, which is they're letting you do the in-home quarantine so that you don't have to quarantine your pet in the country. And when you email them ahead of time, it gives you enough time to communicate back and forth and make and have them ensure before you even get there that all your paperwork is correct. It's basically like a pre-approval process. Not saying that you're guaranteed that everything will be fine once you get there, but somebody is, you know, emailing you, looking at your documents, and giving you like a go ahead. We looked at them, you look good, or here's what you would need as well. So that is almost the whole process. And then you need to 10 days in advance of your trip with your pet. Go back to the USDA accredited vet, have them examine your pet one more time. They'll send the documentation to USDA APHIS. And for Japan, they want physical copies with the wet signature from USDA APHIS. So that means that your vet submits the papers electronically, but you will have a FedEx prepaid envelope sent to them, and they will use that to send your documents back to you once they've been signed and stamped. So that's within a 10-day window before you leave. It can feel kind of like it might not happen, but it usually does. You get your papers a few days before your trip, then you should be ready to go. One other thing to keep in mind that is not on this sheet is the FVRCP. The FVRCP vaccination, they want that too. Even though it's not on the import quarantine procedures page, doesn't have a page number, but it's part B and it has a flow chart. Even though it's not on there, you need it. So it can be any part of the process before you leave, obviously. FVRCP is something that they recommend for cats. Just get it done so that you don't get to this stage of almost being ready to go and then having this other thing that you feel like you have to scramble to complete. So I'm going to repeat it one more time. Microchip, rabies vaccination 1, wait 30 days, rabies vaccination 2, blood draw, titer test, send it away, get the results. But in the meantime, the day of the blood draw is day 0. You're waiting 180 days. That's 6 months. Then at some point, get the FVRCP vaccination. And then 40 days at least in advance of your trip, let the correct immigration branch that is going to inspect your pet when you get to Japan, let them know of your arrival and of all the information so that they can check it and make sure you've done everything correctly. Then, 10 days before your departure, have the USDA accredited vet examine your pet and send your documents to the USDA APHIS office. They will look at them, stamp and sign, and then send them back to you, and then you're ready to go. What other things should you keep in mind? Once you have the titer test, so you've got the microchip, you've vaccinated your pet for rabies, and you've kept those up to date. Once you have the titer test with that timeline, you don't need another titer test for 2 years. That's going to be valid for Japan for 2 years. So if for some reason you left Japan and then wanted to return, the titer test would still be valid. So you wouldn't have to start over. You would just need to, I guess, prove that you have been in the country that you're departing from for at least 6 months, and the correct type of veterinarian examined your pet 10 days in advance. And you would still also need to do the 40 days advance notification to the quarantine service branch that you are flying into. So Narita or Kansai, like those airports. And also, obviously, you have to keep up to date with the rabies vaccinations. If they lapse, that means you have to start the process over, which includes a new titer test. I've flown with Air Canada. That's how I got to Ireland, and I'm probably using Air Canada to go to Japan because they treat animals really well. They have a reputation for treating animals well and being pretty comfortable, and like it's common for pets to travel on that airline, so they're used to it. But this part sucks so much, but because I know Air Canada, I'm just like I'm using what I know because that makes it easier for me and easier for my pet. But Air Canada doesn't let you have something except the cat carrier. They don't let you have a backpack. They don't let you have a carry-on, just the pet carrier. And I I've been told by customer service both times I've flown internationally with my cat that I'm allowed to have a carry-on, but when I get to the airport, they are like, you can't, you have to check that. So if you have a laptop, if you have electronics of some kind, if you want to wash your face or brush your teeth, gotta find a way to fit that shit, including all the goddamn paperwork you have with you, into the cat carrier that is supposed to be small enough to fit under the seat in front of you for the duration of the trip. So that's been stressful both of the times that I have, had the day of the international leg of the flight, because they don't want you to have anything but the cat carrier, even though they tell you to your face that that is not the case. And they on the website it doesn't say anything about that, but in person they will tell you you can't have that carry-on. You can't have a backpack. You have to fit everything into the cat carrier, that your cat is the only thing that's supposed to fit in. So do with that information what you will. I've had a really good experience with Air Canada, and I trust them to be kind to me and my pet, but they will be pretty upset with you if you try to have a carry-on or a backpack with you. So that's rough. I still think it's worth it with all the other things considered, especially for a really long flight. So that's that. If you have any questions about what it takes to get a cat into Europe or taking a cat to Japan, because I'm literally in the middle of the process right now, let me know and I can share with you what I've learned. And yeah, again, this is possible. It just takes some being organized and staying on top of things and maybe being like one step ahead of the vet so that you don't miss anything, especially because those timing windows are the only part that can get you mixed up. All right, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.